Hey there! In this lecture we're going to learn about the for loops and while loops. So far we have seen that understood the program and the sequential flow, the sequential nature of a program, and how we can change that flow using if statements and how we can choose different paths based on certain conditions. So let's talk about for loops and while loops. But before that, let's understand a couple of concepts. For example, you have to write a program in which you have to initialize x with 9, and you have to initialize another variable, let's call it a for a bit of change, and you have to initialize by 6, and then you have to divide 9 by 6, and then you have to store the result again in x, which would be something like you use x is equals to x divided by a. So this particular instance ensures that after the division of x by a, the result is stored in x, and the value of 9, which was previously stored in x, is replaced by the quotient of the division. Okay, so you have to do this a couple of times. You have to repeat the same process, you can say 3 to 4 times. And you have to do the same operation and again unless you meet a particular condition. So in each of these repetitive statements you have to increment the value of a. For example, it was 6, then you have to make it 7, and then to 8, and then to 9. So now we know that the final value of x would be 1. So that is the condition for that is the answer you're looking for. So each time you just have to subtract a, and you have to continue the division process until you get the value of 1. Although it seems a bit odd, you can just divide it by the value of x directly, but let's suppose you do not know the value of x over here. In this example, however, you do, but let's consider a case you have to continue this process and you have to get the value of 1 stored in x, and for that you need to continuously you can say keep on adding the value of a. So you know that even though you do not know the value of x, you know that it is less than 10 and greater than 6. So you think it, you come up with the program, you come up with the strategy, you say, okay, so if I divide the number by itself, I can get that. So I do not know the number itself, so what I'm going to do is I need to find that number. I'm going to start by 6, since the minimum range, the minimum value for that is 6. I'm going to increment 6 until I reach the number, and ultimately when the answer will be 1, I'll get it. So you write these couple of instructions. Then you understand a couple of things, that this is not good code. This seems to be quite repetitive. So since this code is long, this code is repetitive, that's why we have loops for it. So since the program flows sequential and it will start from here and go down till the last instruction, but the repetition starts from here, right? So this is where the repetition starts from. So let's say if I disrupt this flow, the sequential flow, and when it gets over here, it checks that if x is equal to 1, then it's true. Okay, so if it is not true, let's say, okay, so if it is not 1, which means that you have to keep on you have to continue the process, then is there a way that you can somehow go from here to here? So you do not have to write these instructions, you just have to jump from this instruction again, and you keep on looping through these instructions until you get the value of x to be 1. So for that purpose we have loops. Let's talk about while loops first. So a while loop, as the name suggests, it repeats the instructions in a loop till a condition is met. And that condition is dependent on the problem you have. Okay, so let's talk about while loop. Simply put, whenever we are discussing about any while loop, there are two things we need to consider. The first thing, just like an if statement, we have a condition. In this particular case, let's say the condition is based on this particular variable, and the condition is that while I is not equal to 3, which means that as long as the value of I is unchanged, this loop will continue to move on. And let's say I want to print this particular statement, let's say loop 4 times. So this condition has to be false for the loop to break, as long as the condition is true, this loop will continue. So if I somehow do not change the value of I in the loop, it will continue to loop as long as the system does not crash, or the you can say it does not run out of memory. Okay, so so for that purpose I need to change the value of I in order for the condition of while to be true at some instance of time. So I'm going to increment I over here. So I'm incrementing the value of I by 1, and which shows that this loop will run loop. Okay, so after incrementing the value of I, we will see how many times this loop will run. This is running infinite times. Maybe I've done something wrong. So let's just stop it and stop the code. And we have to go upstairs. Yeah, so let's just stop it. Okay, so let's just okay, so what did I do wrong? So as you can see, so let's see, this loop should run at least 3 times, and after running it, we see that this statement is executed, printed 3 times. So if we want to run the loop at, let's say, 10 times, we will see that as long as the value of I is not equal to 10, and we will increment the value of I. So this way we are controlling the number of statements we want to run by while loop. So as far as the functionality goes and the syntax, this is it. And let's talk about for loops. So as you can see, we have a variable that we are controlling over here. It is being initialized, and then it is being checked on a particular condition, and it is being incremented. So for loop, what we have here is a different syntax. We're going to use the value of I, and we're going to see for I, okay, let's just change the variable. It doesn't matter if you're using, it could be any variable. Let's go for X. For example, X is in the range of 3. So as you saw earlier, in while loop, we have to check for the value of I to be 3, and then increment the value of I, and that is somewhat, it is broken down into 3 steps. You can say for the for loop, we do not have to do that. So let's write the print statement over here, and for this particular purpose, the value of X should go run 3 times. Okay, so if I run this, it should run 3 times. Okay, so in this way we can control the number of times we want to run our loop, and in this way we can loop through the number of instructions we want to repeat n times. There are certain other ways we can use for loops. For example, we can use them in iterating in a particular list, and we will study in the next lecture what are lists and how we can iterate through them using loops. But for the syntax for while and for loops, this is as far as it goes.